Hey, good morning. Happy Memorial Day. Welcome to another edition of Morning Scone. I'd be remiss if I did not begin by wishing all of you a happy Memorial Day and certainly recognizing the reason we celebrate this day, and that's to honor those who gave the ultimate sacrifice, who died while defending our country and our freedom. So, sincerely, happy Memorial Day to all of you, and hopefully you take a moment today to recognize the sacrifices of those brave men and women who fought so that we might have our freedoms. Mama. Drew is still back here. Some of you might be wondering why he keeps popping in. He used to fuss at the door sometimes. Papa, go. And so I'd start this video and then I'd hear him fuss and I'd stop, and that sometimes it'd be like 4 or 5 minutes into it, and that would happen several times. Like, you know what, I'm just leaving the door open, and if he comes on the video, I don't care. So anyway, that's why Drew pops in from time to time now. So LSU loses the SEC championship game 9-1 to Ole Miss. A little bit of a bummer after a great tournament. I had someone tweet me. It was Amy LeBlanc, who's a listener of AFR and tweets me regularly. She said, I jinxed him, Matt, because she had basically cracked on me for saying that LSU wouldn't win the tournament before it started. I said, Amy, they haven't won it yet, before the game yesterday. I love you. And I said, Amy, it's not your fault. Jinxes aren't real, but teams running out of gas and pitching is very real, and that's what happened to LSU yesterday. So we'll talk briefly about the game itself and how it transpired, and then we'll talk about what is ahead for LSU as the regional field's going to be announced today. Oh, I forgot to tell you, we're presented by Boudreaux's Mix, of course, the Margarita Mix and the Bloody Mary Mix. So if you're brunching it today, or you love Bloody Marys, enjoy the Boudreaux's Mix, or maybe margaritas are your thing by the pool or at the beach, pick up the Boudreaux's Mix, the Margarita Mix there. It's simple. You just shake it, you pour it, and then you drink it. So, of course, these are non-alcoholic, I should mention. You pour it over ice, you add your tequila or your vodka, whatever your choice is, and you're ready to roll. So, let's start with the game. Caleb Gilbert got the start. Hoover native. I understand what Paul Maneri did there, starting Gilbert. I was thrilled that he did not pitch Mikhail Hilliard. Because Hilliard didn't pitch and Hess has really been taxed of late, my guess is that they go with Hilliard in game 1 of the regional and Hess in game 2, but more on that in a second. I'd love to see Hess get an extra day. Papa. Big block. Okay. I'd love to see go. I'd love to see Hess get another day of rest before the regional. They had Gilbert's final line. He went 3 innings, gave up 9 hits in 3 innings and 3 runs. Did not walk anybody. Gilbert's a strike thrower, but if you're a strike thrower, you have to have dynamic stuff that moves, and Gilbert's hasn't this year. So we've talked about it a little bit, that Gilbert's problem this year, he just hasn't looked right. The 93, 94 of a year ago hasn't been there on the fastball. The life hasn't been there. And I'm just wondering if it's arm fatigue or what's going on. But he's physically not the same guy he was a year ago. And I think that's obvious to everyone who watched. So coming back with just a couple days rest to be able to do what he did and try to give LSU a start and get him off to a good start, I admire it. And look, he kept him in it, because he danced around a lot of trouble, but he gave up just a run in the second, a run in the third. He went out and started the 4th inning. Gave up that run before they brought in Cam Sanders. Sanders is the other thing I want to get to in a second, but let me just briefly touch on offensively. LSU had their chances offensively in this ballgame. They only had 4 hits in the game, but they had their opportunities with guys on base, and they just couldn't deliver with 2 outs. And truthfully, when you look at the fact that it was only a 3-1 ball game, they scored in the first, obviously, with Cabrera's double to bring in Duplantis. But it was only a 3-1 ball game in the bottom of the 4th, and it stayed that way until the 7th. So you had the 4th, the 5th, and the 6th, 3 innings to try to cut into a 2-run lead, and missed opportunities in each of those innings. And then, of course, in the 7th is when Ole Miss struck for 4 runs, and for all intents and purposes, it was over. But really, where it got away was in the 6th, when LSU got runners on 2nd and 3rd against Stokes, and they brought in Ryan Rollison. And Rollison, who's going to be a #1 pick in the draft, not #1 overall, but he'll be a first-round pick in the draft. I think D1 Baseball or Baseball America projects him as like the 16th best prospect, something like that. But he's going to be a high first-round pick. And they bring in Rollison, and he struck out Jake Slaughter, and he struck out Hal Hughes. And you know what? You just kind of tip your cap. Slaughter ripped a couple of balls against him, just foul, and then ultimately Rollison got the best of him. There's no harm in that. There's no crime in that. It's, it was a power play by Mike Bianco, and it worked. And it's something that I think Paul Mainieri would have considered with Mikael Hilliard had this been a closer game late. But, Hilliard would have been on 3 days rest, and you're hoping he's going to pitch on the Friday. The regional talked about this a bit yesterday. It would have been a normal bullpen day for Hilliard, so maybe you could have gotten an inning out of him if you needed it. But the game ended up going the way it did late, so they ended up just obviously going to Vetmeyer and then to Clay Moffitt just to finish it off. It's kind of the problem with the whole staff approach, right? It's why you need a number 3 starter, because what happened in that game is Gilbert was rocky, but at least he kept you in it. Cam Sanders was magnificent again. More on him in a second. But then you handed it to Fontenot, and he just got 1 out, gave up 2 hits, 3 runs, walked a guy. The whole staff approach, the danger in it is you have to hope that everybody is on when you go the whole staff approach. And if one guy doesn't, you try to run 5, 6, 7 guys out there. If one guy's off, then the whole plan falls apart. So Cam Sanders was awesome. I did not like using him again, at least not for the way they did. 3 innings, 33 pitches. He was just magnificent and efficient. And the all-tournament team had Duplantis and Todd Peterson on it, but quite honestly, as great as Peterson was in his 2 outings, saving the Mississippi State game and then coming back and pitching 5 innings against South Carolina, getting the double as well. His story went viral, and you all know what I think about Todd Peterson and the whole story and all that. I think Cam Sanders was equally as, if not more important, to LSU in this tournament because, I think it's safe to say they don't beat Florida without him the second go-round. He was magnificent the first go-round against Florida. And then, yesterday, obviously, he gave you 3 innings as well to go pitch 3 outings. And I don't think he allowed a run in any of his outings. He gave up 1 hit yesterday. I don't think he allowed a run. He was awesome. So my hope is that for Cam Sanders, whatever he found in Hoover, he never lets go because he was just magnificent in all 3 outings. And the stuff with Sanders has never been debatable or debated. The question or the issue was consistency. You knew he had a big fastball. You knew he had life on it. You knew he had a devastating breaking ball. It was all the things that people raved about in fall when coming into the season. Paul Mainieri was saying they thought Sanders could emerge as the number 3 starter behind, if you remember, Hess and Gilbert at the time. Sanders was the guy everybody was talking about as maybe likely to step up and take that role. As we've seen, of course, Mikael Hilliard was the one that established himself. But man, if this Cam Sanders sticks around, what a weapon next year, either as a starter potentially or as that guy who you count on, as just your stopper out of the bullpen. So it was great to see Cam Sanders have the week he did in Hoover. And even before we talk about next year, that could be super influential throughout regional play should LSU continue to advance. So LSU loses to Ole Miss 9-1. Ole Miss is the SEC champ, a tournament champ. They're one of the 4 national seeds projected by D1 Baseball. The regional host sites were announced yesterday. LSU, of course, is not one of them. And today, the regional field and the national seeds will be announced. So a lot of you have asked, Matt, where do you think LSU is going to go? I am terrible at that. I have no idea how the people that predict the regional field do so, at least, when you seed the whole thing. So bottom line is I don't know. I don't know how to predict that. The site I trust is D1 Baseball. They have the most resources with Kendall Rogers and Aaron Fitt. All the best college baseball writers are all at D1 Baseball. So they collectively come together and put together their projection. And they got 4 national seeds from the SEC. They have LSU as the 2 seed in Austin. So Texas as the 1, LSU is the 2, Oral Roberts the 4 playing Texas, and then Washington out of the Pac-12, of course, is the 3 seed taking on LSU. So that's intriguing. It's not an easy draw. Texas won the Big 12 in the regular season, but of course LSU beat Texas in the regular season series in Baton Rouge, and then LSU's opener, if this were to hold, would be against the 3 seed Washington out of the Pac-12. So that's what. Oh, and by the way, they have the Austin regional paired with the Oxford regional. So if this happened, then if LSU were to go to Austin and win that regional, they'd be paired with Ole Miss and then have to go to Oxford for a super regional if everything held like that. So the regional projection show is at 11 a.m. today. Hey, baby. So regional projection shows at 11. We'll know definitively where LSU is going at that time. Hi, baby. What's the matter? Hey, you're going to go for a ride with Mama later? Okay. Sorry. Okay. So regional projection shows at 11. AFR is on the air today. So whatever you're doing for Memorial Day, 3 o'clock, we're on the air and on TV. So if you're at home and you have CST, flip on Cox Sports Television. We'll be there 3 to 6. If you're riding around, if your radio on, whatever the case may be, or your app, we'll be there as well. So 3 to 6, AFR is on today. We'll be talking about the regional field. So we'll know LSU's draw at that point. Normally LSU has media availability, so we'll be able to go catch up with players, and we'll get sound from Palminary and let you hear all the reaction from LSU coaches and players today with the other regional field announced. So here's hoping you'll tune into AFR later today. Again, have a fantastic Memorial Day. Take some time with family and recognize the reason why we celebrate today. And of course, many thanks to our friends over at Boudreaux's. Boudreaux's Mixes, boudreauxmix.com, boudreauxmix.com. It's available in Baton Rouge at Calandro's, Calvin's, and Alexander's Highland Market. And if it's not available where you shop, then demand that they carry it. And check them out on all their social media as well, Boudreaux's Mix and boudreauxmix.com. Okay, y'all be safe today. Have an awesome day celebrating Memorial Day. And we will be back tomorrow. As always, if you haven't yet, hit the subscribe button down there. That helps me a bunch. Later.